Good morning, everyone. We are going to open today with a congregational song in the Pink Book on page 68. If I Had a Hammer, please rise and bow to your spirit as you are willing and able to sing along. Today we have Mick Kinney as our accompanist. 68. Page 68. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Mick, thank you, Jean, for being our lead vocalist there, too. Good morning. My name is Patton White, and I will be facilitating this morning's celebration of life. Welcome to the First Existentialist congregation. We are a philosophically based spiritual community founded on existential philosophy and feminist principles. We make our spiritual home in the Old Stone Church, which was hand-built by the African American Antioch East Baptist Church. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African Americans from the area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all indigenous people. Our opening words this morning So, just a couple of miles away from here, this morning, we have the very first sitting president to be addressing the people at Ebenezer Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Right? As we are speaking here. So keep that in mind as I invite you to consider what you have already experienced so far today. When you woke up this morning, how many of you were in a bed? For those who were in a bed, did you actually physically construct that bed? Once you got out of bed and headed to prepare yourself some breakfast or get somebody else to prepare you breakfast, did you grow that food?
Yes.
Did you grow those coffee beans of the coffee that you were partaking of if you were drinking coffee? So all of this is to embrace the words of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King. We must either learn to live together as brothers, he says, or we are all going to perish together as fools.
Yeah.
All life is interrelated and interconnected. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We are made to live together because of the interrelated structure of reality. And these are all little snippets from King that Jamel Bowie, one of the New York Times columnists, had put together in a piece that he published yesterday. So I just wanted to share those. I'll share some more towards the end of our celebration of life today. Do we have anyone new or who is here perhaps for the first time and would like to let us know who you are and how you came to be here? Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Bernice Evans, and I was born and raised right over here in Old Folk Ward on Highland Avenue. Okay. With my son is there living now. He's the 5th generation. His daughter is the 6th generation. I enjoyed coming here this morning with my mother, Miss Moselle Johnson. She'll be 96 years old on the 29th of this month. We go to Macedonia AME Church in Rex, Georgia. Yeah. My son brought the church this morning, so thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
I would like to say something.
Your mother has a microphone.
Just turn it on. Push the button once for Lorraine.
Moselle Johnson. Moselle.
There you go. It's on now.
Can you talk?
Yes.
Okay, Mom.
Good morning to everybody.
Good
morning.
I'm so proud to be here today because I've been watching this service for about 2.5 months. And something just got within me. I can't help but to look at it. I start off looking at it in the morning, all day during the day. Because when something worries me like that, I got to go and find out what it is. And I just really like it. And I'm looking for the and healing and everything. He healed me many times with cancer and different things. And I said, I'm going to find that church. And I want to come and worship with y'all. It's not the first time now. I'll come back here again. If I have to send some of y'all to call, some of y'all to come pick me up. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us today. Any other new-timers?
Newcomers?
All right, do we have any birthdays or anniversaries to celebrate today?
We got one of them in 2 weeks.
Then we will wait until 2 weeks.
I don't think you might have turned off.
That's okay. All right, we're going to move on to our next congregational song, which is also in the pink book. It's on page number 3. 3. We shall overcome. Please rise and bow your spirit as you are willing and able to sing We Shall Overcome. natural lighting happening today. It's lovely uplighting. Having been so kind of overcast and dreary for a while, I'm basking in it. If anyone has a community announcement that they would like to share, please write it down. There is a pad and a pen back on the back table there, but write it down and pass it up to me before we are at the end of our service together. We're going to, just so people are aware, we're going to skip over Marcia's fellowship minister moment simply because she is feeling the need to rest herself today. And so we're going to go into our period of silent meditation, our time of silence. This is a time that we spend together in community, but simply being silent together. We do have candles on either side of the sanctuary if you would like to light one. We are going to now sing another congregational song, which is also in the pink songbook. It's on page 105. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able.
You all may remember the chorus. If you do jump in, you'll figure it out. Jump in. Okay. Boy, the sun. Wow. for me. He claimed his freedom, yeah, yeah, yeah. He really was a king, he was a king, really was a king. He was a king, he really was a king. He was a king, he really was a king. He had a vision where justice flowed free, where each one honored everyone else, so no way he could see hatred with silence of challenge, the rumble in reply. He claimed his dignity, yeah, he held his head up high. Was the king, he was the king, he was the king, he really was the king, he really was the king. Somebody shot him down. They thought they could kill all he stood for. We remember him now, and we always will. Was the king, he really was the king. He was the king, he really was the king. He was the king, he really was the king. He was the king, he really was the king. March on, march, march on. March on, march on. Really was the king, he was the
Thank you, Dr. Jean. Thank you, Nick. And thank you to everyone who gave during our collection.
Can you say something about the background? It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, yeah, it is an invitation back where Edie is. If you can point, there's a tray there with some additional snowflakes that are cut out. And this is our winter banner. It was actually the one that kind of helped us open the space back up back in March after our 2 years of lockdown. Anyway, so I invite you to, or anybody who wishes to, either write an existentialist winter thought or the names of somebody that you would like to remember, and they will get placed up on this winter wonderland. Thank you. All right, so today we are going to be hearing from Leon Clymore, one of our members. And Leon is going to be speaking on Dr. Rachel, is it Remen? The life work of a wounded healer. So please join me in welcoming our fellow member, Leon Clymore.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Keep that microphone close to your mouth.
All right, thank you. Well, I think the Program Guild for inviting me to speak today. I thank the musicians, and I thank Patton for remarks about Dr. Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'll get it. I enjoyed very much Jan Lister's Newsweek newsletter. Man, I'm having trouble speaking. And especially the picture on the front of it, I enjoyed a lot. Today and tomorrow we honor the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a national hero, a great prophet and moral leader, a great human being. Last week, Loretta Ross taught us about calling out and calling in. Dr. King called out and called in our nation. He called out the values and religion of the United States of America. While the extreme right wing tells us that we are a Christian nation, Dr. King might tell us we are not and never have been a Christian nation. A great proportion of our people worship another religion. It has no name, but it has three gods. They form an unholy trinity. Those gods are materialism, militarism, and racism. He spoke a lot about those three things and wrote a lot about those three things. Dr. King preached against this unholy trinity and was assassinated for calling us out. But he also called us into building and becoming the beloved community. He said, in effect, let's love one another. Let's be compassionate and just and tolerant and respectful and kind and helping to each other. Well, I want to talk today about a person who has spent her entire life helping to build the beloved community. That is Dr. Rachel Remen, a wounded healer. I have a few sheets of paper on the back table with her picture and the names of the two books that I'll be speaking about. For many years, my wife and I would have a devotional time after breakfast. We would read a part of the Bible or a Christian book based on the Bible and then have a prayer, taking turns reading and praying out loud. As I moved away from Christianity, we searched for reading materials that would satisfy both of us. How do you find inspirational writings that supply a Christian and an atheist at the same time? Not easy. For the past 2 years after our breakfast, my wife and I have read a short chapter, about 2 to 5 pages each time, from one of Dr. Rachel Remen's 2 books, My Grandfather's Blessings and Kitchen Table Wisdom. We began in January of 21. We began with My Grandfather's Blessings, then went to Kitchen Table Wisdom. After finishing them both, knowing how difficult it was to find materials that we both enjoyed, we said, let's read them again. We did. Then we finished and we said, let's read them again. And we finished My Grandfather's Blessings in the past year and over halfway through Kitchen Table Wisdom for the 3rd time. We're not alone in liking these 2 books. They have sold over 1 million copies and been translated into 23 languages. Well, who is this Rachel Remen. She is an 84-year-old pediatrician, therapist, author, workshop speaker, among other things. She's been counseling those with chronic and terminal illness with cancer for more than 20 years. She is currently clinical professor of family and community medicine at the University of California at San Francisco School of Medicine. She was born in New York City, trained as a pediatrician, but gained fame as a therapist, author, and teacher. She founded a medical school curriculum called the Healer's Art. It's used in half of the medical schools in the United States and at least 7 medical schools abroad. She was one of the first to recognize and document the psychological and spiritual impact of cancer on people and their families. Through her television appearances and lectures, she has reminded many thousands of people of their power to grow beyond their current challenges and heal themselves. I wonder if anyone here has ever heard of Dr. Rachel Remen. Anybody? Okay. Oh, Roz has? Okay, good. Well, I highly recommend her books. They're inspirational. They focus on values and caring for people. Dr. Remen comes from a Jewish family. Her grandparents and mother immigrated from Russia. Her grandfather was an Orthodox rabbi and scholar of Kabbalah and mysticism. He lived with her family and they spent a lot of time together talking about Hebrew Bible stories and their meanings. He died when she was 7, but he had had a great impact on her life by then. After several years practicing as a pediatrician, she moved entirely into counseling and psychotherapy for both other doctors and patients with cancer, especially for patients who were in a terminal stage of cancer. Her focus and teaching and counseling for doctors was to help them become more attentive to the relational side of medicine, how to listen better, how to relate to their emotions and be in relationship with their patients, how to grieve the loss of patients, how to accept their own limitations and the limitations of medicine. She tells many stories of her therapy with doctors and patients. A major point of her 2 books is her dissatisfaction with medical training that doctors receive, that urges them to focus on almost entirely on the scientific analysis and the objectivity of medicine, and largely ignore and suppress their emotional involvement with their patients and not being touched by the pain and loss that they experience with their patients. She said, "In some ways, a medical training is like a disease. It would be years before I would fully recover from mine." In Kitchen Table Wisdom, she wrote, "The second day of my internship in pediatrics, I went with my senior resident to tell some young parents that the automobile accident from which they had escaped without a scratch had killed their only child. Very new to this doctor thing, when they cried, I cried with them. After it was over, the senior resident took me aside and told me that I had behaved very unprofessionally. These people were counting on our strength, he said. I had let them down. I took his criticism very much to heart. By the time I myself was a senior resident, I hadn't cried in years. During that year, a 2-year-old baby left unattended for only a moment, drowned in a bathtub. We fought to bring him back, but after an hour we had to concede defeat. I went to tell these parents that we had not been able to save their child. Overwhelmed, they began to sob. After the time, the father looked at me standing there strong and silent in my white coat. "I'm sorry, doctor," he said. "I'll get hold of myself in a minute." I remember this man, his face wet with the father's tears, and I think of his apology with shame. Convinced by then that my grief was a useless, self-indulgent waste of time, I had made myself into the sort of a person to whom one could apologize for being in pain. In a week-long retreat for cancer patients that Dr. Remen was leading, and she led many, one man started talking about his doctor, an oncologist, who had been giving him chemotherapy for some time. After each injection in the doctor's office, the two of them would sit together and talk quietly for about 15 minutes. The doctor was the only person to whom he could talk honestly, who understood the experiences that he was going through. But the patient told his doctor that the chemotherapy was not really helping him, and he wanted to stop it. The doctor then told him that if he stopped the chemotherapy, then there was nothing more he could do to help him, and they would stop seeing each other. This hurt the patient. Because he got a lot of help from the doctor. He told the retreat group, "My doctor's love is as important to me as his chemotherapy, but he doesn't know it." Rachel says, "For a long time I had carried the belief that as a physician my love didn't matter, and the only thing of value I had to offer was my knowledge and my skill. My training had argued me out of my truth. Medicine is as close to love as it is to science, and its relationships matter, even at the edge of life itself." Dr. Remen has a 60-year personal history with Crohn's disease. I didn't know much about Crohn's disease, but after reading her books, I know that it's a very painful, debilitating, chronic disease. She writes of living with an ileostomy appliance for most of her life. She never married. She's a wounded healer. She writes on her website, "We're all healers. We heal with our wholeness, our humanity, all of our life experience, even our wounds. Our own wounds make us gentle with the wounds of others and able to trust the mystery of healing. Our vulnerability connects us to the vulnerability in others in compassionate and loving ways." She writes in Kitchen Table Wisdom, "The Buddhists talk about samsara, the world of illusion. It is the place that most of us live. Mistaking illusion for reality is said to be the root cause of our suffering. Yet, in some immensely elegant way, suffering itself can release us from illusion. Often in times of crisis, when we reach for what we have considered our strength, we stumble onto our wholeness and our real power, how we were before we fixed ourselves to win approval. In a time of real need, we may remember and free ourselves." This caused me to think a bit. Personal note. I have lived with illusion most of my life. Illusion that the Church of Christ denomination was the only denomination of Christianity that was acceptable to God. For years I believed that CRAP. illusion that the Bible was an inspired revelation from God, illusion that Christianity was the only religion acceptable to God, illusion that there is a personal God, illusions about who I was and what I could do. I hope you haven't had so many illusions. She wrote, suffering is intimately connected to wholeness. A power in suffering to promote integrity is not only a Christian belief, it has been a part of almost every religious tradition. Yet, 20 years of working with people with cancer in the setting of unimaginable loss and pain suggests that this may not be a teaching or a religious belief at all, but rather some sort of natural law. That is, we might learn it not by divine revelation, but simply through a careful and patient observation of the nature of the world. Suffering shapes the life force, sometimes into anger, sometimes into blame and self-pity, but eventually it may show us the freedom of loving and serving life. So that made me pause and think, what has my suffering done for me? What has your suffering done for you? What have you learned? What have I learned from it? I suffered traumatic stress from being raised in an alcoholic and child molesting family. I suffered from being raised in a fundamentalistic denomination of Christianity. I was educated at a Christian-related and backward college and seminary. I was hampered by mental health issues and that resulted in poor choices in life. But all that has brought me to where I am now, for good or for bad, with some maturity, some education, better choices, slowly learning to love. I am the happiest I've ever been. At 87 years old, just a whippersnapper to this lady. I daily list all my reasons for gratitude, and they are many. I've certainly been wounded. I hope I'm becoming a wounded healer. Dr. Remen seems to be saying in her stories and books that life has three great components: science, loving relationship, and mystery. While I no longer believe in a creating, controlling, arranging personal God, I do see mystery in how and why it comes together at times in marvelous ways. We can't explain it, but we're caused to wonder in amazement. I'm thinking of an example. A small thing. Losing faith in Christianity, I came to First E to be part of a community searching for truth, for service, and for relationships. I found here at First E the father and grandmother of two of my own grandchildren, Patton and Nancy White. A mystery. Did someone arrange this? Or is it just coincidence? Well, I don't know, but I like it. Another example. My wife and I are very different people. She loves to be with people. I'm a loner and often uncomfortable around people. She loves nature. I love reading and reflecting. She is a Christian. I am an atheist. How and why did we come together? How did we last 64 years together and counting? How is it that we needed each other for growing and shaping each other? How is it that every year gets better in our relationship? Is this an arrangement by some force or person or coincidence? It's a mystery. In the book, My Grandfather's Blessings, we see Rachel Remen surrounded by two influences in her childhood: her atheist, socialist parents, and her grandfather, rabbi, scholar of Jewish Kabbalah mysticism. Rachel was surrounded by science, relationships, and mystery. She tells of her counseling sessions with a young man who had been an outstanding athlete, whose cancer in one leg led to its amputation above the knee. He was very bitter and angry at his losses. Loss of his leg, loss of his athletic abilities, loss of meaning in his life, loss of popularity and recognition. After a number of counseling sessions, the young man agreed to try to be a support and encourager to other young people with cancer losses. He volunteered in a hospital, met a young woman who'd had breast surgery due to cancer and was very depressed, without hope for a decent life in her view. At one point, the young man took off his artificial leg and hopped around on one leg, and they both laughed together. She began to change her attitude and find hope. They formed a romantic relationship and got married. The young man was a wounded healer. Dr. Remen writes of her therapy sessions with a gifted cancer surgeon who sought help for his depression. He had lost the meaning of his work, felt useless and worthless. She gave him an assignment to journal each day by asking himself 3 questions and writing down the answers. The questions were: what surprised me today? What moved me or touched me today? What inspired me today? The surgeon agreed to do this assignment. After several weeks of doing this, he reported back to Rachel, "I began to see things differently. My attitude started to change. People seemed to pick up on it because their attitude seemed to change too. I began talking to people about more than their cancer and its treatment. I began talking about what I could see in them." He began asking questions of his patients. "What has sustained you in dealing with this illness? Where do you find your strength?" Rachel wrote, "Most of us lead far more meaningful lives than we know. Perhaps it is only by those who speak the language of meaning, who have remembered how to see with the heart, that life is ever deeply known or served." I personally have become more deeply committed to reviewing my life and recalling my reasons for gratitude for at least 2 times a day, in our meditative time after our breakfast, and as I snuggle under the covers in bed at night. Our sufferings, our struggles, our personal pain can be the basis for helping to heal someone else around us. Let us be vulnerable, share our struggles, be wounded healers. The world needs us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leon. Indeed, it is synchronistic that you should end up in this community. Wish I knew And our closing words, again, this comes from an essay by Jamel Bowie, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that the words of King were a reminder that in pursuit of justice, how we relate to each other in our means will affect our eventual ends. And that obligation and interconnectedness is as relevant today as ever. And last but not least, to connect to laborers around the world, to see that their struggles relate to ours and ours relate to theirs, is to begin to forge the network of mutuality that we will need to tackle our global problems as well as to confront the obstacles to our collective liberation from domination and hierarchy. I invite you to pay attention, to look at others in the eye, and to say hello. Thank you all. We will see you next Sunday. We will be hosting Alice Lovelace, and Charlene will be our facilitator, and
CJ Jones.
Ted Band will be our musician. So come back next Sunday. Have a great day. Stay warm.